We're looking at picture postcards, older picture postcards from the imperial and the Soviet period in Russia.
I gotta make a bigger in between.
As objects of material and visual culture that were used to sort of construct concepts of nation and culture.
So I'm looking at, the Russian Empire, and so then Brooke's doing Soviet Union.
So I initially got interested in postcards because I was actually given a postcard of Tolstoy by a friend of mine. And, initially I liked the postcard because it was a picture of Tolstoy, my favorite writer. But then I started to think more about the postcard itself as an object, right? That it was an object that was produced in a particular time and in context and for a particular purpose.
I'm mostly focusing on two main sets of postcards. The one from 1958 is called The Friendly Family of Peoples of the Soviet Union. They usually feature one person. There's this border of some sort of folk design usually. These both tend to have agricultural scenes in them, and then in the very background you can see power lines and smokestacks of some kind in the background here. So both of them are trying to include images of industry within the agricultural scene. The 1972 series has a much more standardized design, with each of them usually have a man and a woman. They're carrying some objects, and then there's a collage in the background of different images. The 1958 series, The Friendly Family, it seems that it's more accommodating of differences and distinctions between the nationalities, whereas in the second series, the design is much more standardized, and there are actually some people who are wearing more modern clothes as opposed to national folk costume.
I've been working primarily in the pre-revolutionary period, and so they're mainly postcards that depict members of the peasantry or the working class within Russia and labeling them again as types.
So for example, the one of Russian peasants, you have a barn, two women standing in typical Russian peasant costume, so a sarafan with a kokoshnik, like a headgear. It's not what it's looking like. Again, something that's very different from what the purchaser or the tourist in this case would be used to, and so it presents this idea of what the manufacturers are calling typical Russians, right?
So we talk a lot about the empire versus union. So the Russian Empire versus the Soviet Union, and in these kind of imperial ones, they seem very much to kind of feed into this idea of empire and especially a kind of hierarchy that gets created when you try to typologize or typify people, put them into these types. Whereas with the Russian Revolution, the creation of the Soviet Union, then the people of those Central Asian areas or the Caucasian areas then actually were no longer subjects to the Russian Empire, but rather were members of independent unions, or rather republics rather, that then went together to form the union.